They search for survivors in horribly cramped and dangerous conditions. Gravity seems to be the sole reason many of these homes are still standing. It's hard to imagine how humans could withstand this force, enough to uproot trees and sweep away 9-story-high apartment blocks. This is what happened to some of the buildings. Look, it's pushed all the way through several walls down here. And then once you're inside, it's covered with mud. Every single room is full of mud. There are trees in the middle of this building, and I don't even know what floor we're actually on. There are a few foreign teams helping out now, but it's amid criticism that there are far too few and they're far too late. Many are using shovels and picks to try to find their relatives on their own.
There's no help. There's nobody to help. There's no government. They've been buried here for 5 days.
Who wants to carry on knowing their family are buried there rotting? Please help us and have mercy on us. We've suffered enough.
An estimated 10,000 in Derna are still unaccounted for, and the international teams which have arrived seem unprepared for the scale of this disaster.
This is for us the first time we saw this disaster, because the tsunami, this area there was 15 meters water for 50 minutes.
The geography of Derna has changed entirely, and nothing is as it was. Vehicles were tossed aside by the water torrent, thrown up and smashed down again. Sides of buildings have been torn apart, and family cars left wedged inside homes. Whole apartment blocks have been ripped off their foundations. This one's been lifted up by the water and dumped 40 meters away. It's left the whole city, the entire country, traumatized. Whole families were washed away, and thousands are now without homes. And they're still fishing out bodies from the ocean. These sights are not easy to see. The mechanical digger scoops up a young child's body amongst the debris. She looks like she's 10 or 11 years old. These are grim times for those suffering and those with the awful task of retrieving the thousands who've died. This catastrophic disaster comes after years of neglect, civil war and a NATO bombing campaign which left the country awash with weapons. The country, split in two by competing governments in east and west, now has a city ripped apart by a natural disaster compounded by poor governance. Derna residents are insisting the authorities knew of the risk of the dams bursting, were told to build multiple extra dams, yet did nothing.
So that's what should have done. During these 45 years, we should have about 10 dams behind the second one to help, even in the branches.
If they'd done that, could this disaster have been averted?
Yeah, at least it will help. 10 dams like the second one, of course it will help, of course.
Residents insist there was no evacuation plan and they weren't even warned of the storm by the authorities. But the new Prime Minister of the East denied that to us and seemed to blame history pretty much for the disaster.
All the countries and governments who fight over Libya are only interested in our oil and our natural resources. The international community is only focused on oil and not on the unity of Libya.
Violent politics and vicious natural disasters are a toxic mix, and ordinary Libyans are paying for a catastrophe which many believe could and should have been averted, and which the country is utterly unable to deal with. Alex Crawford, Sky News in Derna.